Um, during planning for this year's FMP, I have used a lot of table formats for each documentation task compared to past works where I usually use just a slide full of text, really. Uh, Looking at the content, you see I've actually simplified majority of the content in this format, which I found quite useful for planning. I also instead of I also used red text as a good way to indicate key points for the slides, which I usually do not do. I found that more helpful than actually writing it inside of the text. Um, in terms of progression, I would say I'm I'm somewhat above track, or at least at the very least on track. Looking at planning's content, you can see I've majority of it done. I would say, however, um, I could have added more content, but in all honesty, I think the content I already have is more than enough. Uh, I would say my planning is uh mm, a bit detail a bit more detailed than necessary, in all honesty. Um, you can see majority of the content is presented in a text heavy layout, which I believe in industry they do not do planning in this type of format. Rather, they focus more on the visual side of things, which while I have done, is mostly just majority of planning content is really just written format. So I could have made the planning more um, aesthetically appealing and more visual based. Um, the planning as a whole, I do not think it needs anything, but I could have included more concept arts and color palettes, since I've only done about like 2 assets, which while that is a fair amount, I could easily do more for more for more well planning work. Um, I would say as it stands, the FMP doesn't really lack anything. If you look at the whole of the portfolio, you can see each section is quite detailed, and that includes planning. If I was to include something other than this to improve the grade even more would be a level plan. However, I don't think a level plan would benefit me that much, in all honesty, since I already have a grey box, and a grey boxing is pretty much just a level plan, making it kind of pointless. Um, uh, any, um, well, I'm not sure about it. I think uh my FMP may want more detail, since as it stands, the content in planning is a bit short compared to the other tasks. However, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if I was to improve planning, I would add more examples of planning. So like um let's see, like maybe a risk assessment, or um or um I'm not really sure, but yeah, just additional content might help it if it actually needs any. I forgot to mention, um, for the foreseeable problems in this project, uh, I think, based on what I have so far, it could be the amount of slides I'll end up having in the end of the FMP. I think it may go above the 115 range, especially because of the inclusion of the theory section, the problem solving section, and presentation section. Those would definitely extend the whole of the FMP more than what I ideally want. Um, how I can solve this problem is by like ensuring those stages have fewer slides, and maybe in planning or in research, remove uh not remove slides, just make sure production is less in depth than what I usually do, because I usually do all of production in a very detailed format. I would just ensure the other stages just have fewer slides. Yeah, essentially. Um, one more thing I forgot to say is, in planning, the most useful documentation tasks were, I would say, for um really the concept art for the logo, alongside the proof visualization for it, and the color palette for it. The reason why I say this is the most significant planning documentation task is because, unlike the others, like the other content, like the other assets or props that I could have into my FMP scene, this one needs a specific design unique to me in order to make it, well, make sense with the FMP. So I think the concept art for it, alongside the pre-visualization, alongside the final design for it, was actually beneficial, really useful for this asset slash prop, which I'll probably include into the FMP. I'll also say the collection of feedback was useful because, well, it works as just a way to justify, um, well, it works as a good way to like collect people's opinions on the designs. Alongside, it can work as like evidence for what I said. So, for example, I said for the color palette that the third one is the best in my personal preference. By doing a survey and everyone, well, majority of people voting for the gold one, I'm basically using that as justification, using the feedback as a justification for my choice, which I think is useful in terms of planning.